Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Fleet Week Connected and Electric. Yesterday, we already had a video podcast, and today we have an exciting webinar in front of us, supported by one of the biggest and main leasing companies on a global level, ALD Automotive. What are we going to talk to you about today? It's powertrains and connectivity. With great powertrains come great responsibilities, and data will be the superhero of your electrification journey. Indeed, more than ever, electrification and connectivity are really important solutions for the future of your vehicle fleet management. In this webinar, you will have the opportunity to ask your questions as we will have a Q&A together with our experts. And the experts today are Frederic Wagner of ChargePoint, and ChargePoint is the biggest EV charging station provider in Europe and North America, and also a partner of ALD Automotive. We also have the honor to welcome Virginie Pochat, and together with her colleague Matt Dale, they will explain to us what ALD has in petto in terms of fleet electrification and how you can easily and seamless be sure that you can control your electric fleet via connected solutions. So Frederic, Virginie and Matt, welcome in the Fleet Week. I know that we will have an exciting session, and once again to the audience we will have a Q&A later on, so if you have a question, submit your question via the chat, and after the presentation of our three experts we will have a Q&A where we can moderate the most interesting questions. I leave now the floor to Virginie because I think that you will start the presentation around data will be the superhero of our electrification journey.
Thank you, Stephen. Hello, everyone. Thank you to Adam for attending this webinar. So I'm Virginie Pochat. I'm international sales consultant at the headquarters of ALD Automotive. Today, we're going to present you our methodology to help you to transition to EV and it will be all about your data. So to introduce this webinar, I would like to understand the challenges we are all facing, especially in the automotive environment. On one hand, we see that we are in a race, in a communication race, and also a commitment race toward our planet. Every day, we hear a company, a government, city talking about their new targets by reducing CO2 emissions, banning diesel, or achieving zero carbon neutrality by very ambitious targets. It's a great movement, but it's very scary. On the other hand, we've been through a worldwide pandemic who left us all anxious about the new world. But now it's the moment. Life is coming back. People are coming back to work. Business is recovering. So now it's the moment to face the new reality. But the question is, how do you do? Where should you start to make things happen? So it's why today we're going to present you a methodology driven by data. Our approach is really based on your employees' needs, adapted to your environment, and also to the maturity of the country. So we will, during this webinar, we will explain, sorry, next slide, please. We will organize this webinar around 4 parts. The first part will be how to collect the data and collecting the good data. In this first part, we will have the pleasure to have a presentation of Matt Dale, our EV business owner, and who will talk to you about ALD ProFleet, its ALD product. The second part will be how to organize your data and how to create your driver profile. The third part will be about how to analyze your data in order to define your offer. And the last part will be about how to monitor your data and the importance of frequent updates. In this last part, we also have the pleasure to have Frederic Wagner from our strategic partner, ChargePoint, who will talk to you about all the charging ecosystem. Next slide, please. So how to collect your data? We have identified 3 sources of data collection. The first source is your lease contract. Your lease contract is the historical data source you have. It's your global fleet management dashboard. Here you have all the information about your contracts, the mileage, the duration, the brand, the model, the CO2 emission, etc., etc. But also you have data in your invoices. However, this source of data shows its limits. Usually it's theoretical data, so it's not real data. And you can also have real data, but it's not on real time. There is an issue about the updates. The second source of data we have identified is directly your employees. We realized that this source of data is not so often used, and we do believe that in your EV transition, this source of data is a key element for success. How can you collect the data from your employees? It's by creating and building your survey. It's very important in this survey to look for 3 information: the charging infrastructure, the daily or weekly mileage, and also the specific mileage due to business trips and vacations. The third source of data are your vehicles. On the new vehicles, you have a lot of connectivity. However, this connectivity is not yet adapted to collect the data directly from those new vehicles. But we have market device, the telematics, where you can have a lot of information directly in your vehicle through the telematics. So here I will hand over this presentation to Matt Dale so that he can present the ALD Fleet products.
Next slide, please. So good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Dale and I am the EV business owner for ALD Automotive. Virginie has already told you that data is becoming more important in running your fleet. But what I'd like to do is just have a bit more of a deep dive into connected car data that's available and how you can use it in thinking about your e-mobility policy. Next slide, please. ALD ProFleet, our connected car solution, can be a key element in helping transition your fleet from internal combustion engine, ICE, to a full e-mobility solution. So let's start with the basics. As you think about moving to an e-mobility solution, you need to understand how your fleet's utilized. So things like how often your drivers use their vehicles, how far they go during the week or at the weekend, what times of day or night do they use their car or their van? Do they only use them for business journeys, or is it for private use as well? And that's just for starters. All of this data needs to be collected, and whether that's directly from the vehicle manufacturer's onboard systems or via a telematics dongle, it needs to be pulled into one location so that it can then be processed. We also need to be able to accept new forms of data to help us deliver new technologies and product innovations. As the data is processed, it needs to be aggregated into a consistent and coherent format so that it can then be analysed and turned into something more usable. We're all surrounded by data, masses of it. We're inundated with it. But what we have to do is ensure that the data that we analyse is useful to our customers and can help them make informed decisions as they transition to new types of mobility. Drivers are looking for tailored experiences, from vehicle customization to connected onboard services to personalised mobility plans. Everybody's looking for something slightly different and that suits their own lifestyle. Once we've analysed the data, we need to monitor it. Different customers have different needs in this area. Some customers only want to use data to monitor driver performance. So if a driver's braking too hard or speeding, or if they're constantly accelerating with excess. But many want to use connected car data in helping to understand which of their drivers could transition to an electric vehicle, or whether a particular ELCV would work for them on a specific delivery route. And this is the new way that we're having to monitor and understand the data. And as ELCV fleets grow and fleets are managing overnight depot charging, fleet managers need to be able to know that their vehicles are on charge so that they're ready for deliveries the next day. They could even preheat the vehicles on a chilly winter morning. So this new gold that we found called data, which has actually been around for a long time, it doesn't provide tangible business value unless you use it properly. And that's a key element for us with our ProFleet product. Next slide, please. So, focusing in on using connected fleet data to help electrify your fleet. Let's just take a look at some of the elements where this data can help EV transition in particular. Activity management. Let's just take a look at real-time vehicle status, where a vehicle is, when it's working, what it's doing. Okay, probably more important is geolocation and geofencing. We can look at the time for an example that an LCV is off the road for maintenance and understand the potential reduction in downtime by switching to electric. So what are the savings available in doing something like that? We can also look at dwell time. So the time that a vehicle is parked up for delivery or when it's working on a customer site. And this can allow us to help the customer think about where charging events can take place. So rather than creating new time off the road, we can actually utilize the time when the vehicle's doing its standard route. You can look at route optimization, so you can see if you can improve on a route, where you offload equipment or deliver parcels or such like. And then you can have your personalized fleet manager dashboard so that you can see everything that's going on all of the time and understand exactly which vehicles might be more suitable to switch to electric. Now, for a long time, telematics has been seen as a little bit of a big brother scenario looking at driver behavior. But actually, as we move into electrification, the safety elements on an electric vehicle, be it a car or an LCV, tend to be more technically advanced, and the vehicles offer more safety. But there is still going to be, even in electric vehicles, the element of driver behavior. We hear a lot about the torque that comes from an electric vehicle and that drivers are going to accelerate extremely hard. And whether that's a car or an LCV, it might be something that a customer wants to watch. When it comes to cost savings, fuel cost, traditional versus electricity, we always talk about total cost of ownership when considering taking an electric vehicle fleet on, rather than just the cost of the vehicle. And with telematics, or with a connected vehicle, it's a lot easier to manage that TCO. What you have to consider is that with an electric vehicle, there is less maintenance time, so it spends less time in the dealer, so there's less time to capture the mileage. So when we're looking at running TCO and being able to understand how much your fleet is really costing, that mileage data is going to be really important to you. And the same with, as we go through measuring CO2 reduction, obviously as you hit electric, you've got zero tailpipe emissions, so that's quite an easy one. Fleet utilization, understanding where vehicles are used. So this could be your pool fleet in the office, understanding the utilization of them, when they're charged, when they're not charged, making sure that people are doing what they need to there. And on the ELCV side, understanding the route planning again, on which vehicles are suitable for routes, both before both before and after electrification takes place. And then, as I say, total mileage understanding is really important when you're looking at savings. And then we've got the traditional advice, again, reporting with analytics, understanding how drivers are using vehicles, how they're getting the best out of them. Consolidating these reports into simple to use information. As I said before, we are overloaded with data these days, and we have to ensure that we produce the right information that our customers are going to want to use and need to help them manage their fleet properly. Driver suitability, looking at which drivers are able to switch to electric quickly. So do they tick all the boxes? Do they have off-street parking? Do they need off-street parking? Can they charge their vehicles at the office? Where is the suitability? What is, if you like, the low-hanging fruit where those drivers actually are doing short journeys with a regularity that says, actually, you know what? That car works for them. We can put them into it. And then we build that into our consultancy recommendations. which Virginie will take you through in more detail. Thank you. I'll now hand you back to Virginie and she'll continue with the presentation.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for this very interesting presentation. As you can see, data is the new gold, and it's very important. You can have a lot of data directly from your vehicle. So to continue with our methodology and to continue describing it, now we are going to talk about how to organize your data and how to create your driver profile. So next slide, please. So how to organize your data. We suggest three. The first step is select your target. By selecting your target, it's very, very important to identify your stakeholders. Here, when we're talking about EV transition, we see that HR managers are always part of this EV transition. They have a major role. We also see that CSR managers are usually here in the projects, meetings, and in the workshops, because they know how to report the CO2 emission, and they have also a very important role. Of course, the finance manager has to be integrated, as there is the cost information you will have to take in consideration. However, maybe you have other stakeholders in your industry, for example, the facility manager. So it's really important for you to identify your stakeholders. After, you have to choose your target. Here, we're not only talking about EV transition, we also talking about a mobility strategy. So are you going to analyze all your employees or only the employees having a car plan? Are you willing to analyze all the countries or a specific country or a specific site? So it's really important for you to validate this first step. Here in this webinar, we are going to focus only on the employees with the benefit car. The second step to follow, it's match your data. So you have to match the data from the three sources we have identified before, and you have to define your criteria. Here we suggest 5 criteria where you can organize groups around those criteria. So as in the driver survey, the daily weekly mileage, the specific mileage, the charging infrastructure, but also the job position and the mindset. This criteria will help you to establish your driver profile. So once again, the driver profile, you have to create your own driver profile as you're taking in consideration your industry and your environment. So here you have 5 driver profiles linked to a benefit car, but you can have other driver profile. We suggest that you don't create more than 5 or 6 driver profile so that you can really create flexible mobility strategy. We estimate that creating your driver profile can take around 6 weeks. Next slide, please. Once you have created your driver profile, you can deep dive in their needs, and this will help you to analyze the data and define together your alternative solutions. So here, it's still an example. We have defined 6 blocks, 6 offers, which will answer the employee's needs. So of course, we have the very common blocks offers, which will help you to create your EV transition, but we will also show you that we have other offers which will help you to create and to design your new mobility strategy. So here we have the block of ICE vehicles, which are the petrol, diesel, mild hybrids, and hybrid vehicles. Today, 80 to 90% of your employees has an ICE vehicle because they don't have any charging infrastructure. But in the future, this aims to change. During the last 2 years, we saw that the PHEV, the plug-in hybrid vehicles, are taking a more important space in the needs of your employees. So the PHEV has the advantage to be a good transition to your EV transition. Sorry. So here you can see that you need to have a charging infrastructure, or at home or at work, and it also helps to tackle the employees' range anxiety. So it's a great offer to transition to what we're here today, to an EV vehicle. So the BEVs, the electric vehicles. Here, it will be the focus you need to take in consideration, those electric vehicle offer. So usually today, the employees who are using electric vehicles, they have a small commute, less than 40 kilometers every day. They have a charging infrastructure at home and at work. And they have the mindset they want to be part of this transition. So they are early adopters. After, you can see that by building this mobility strategy, you can combine these offers. For example, the switch product. The switch product is a product where you have an electric vehicle for your day-to-day life, and 6 weeks per year, you can use for your private usage a bigger car with a different powertrain so that you can do bigger and longer distance. We thought it was very important to talk about bikes and e-bikes. The post-COVID situation showed that this offer is really raising a lot, and I'm sure you all have a lot of needs from your from your employees. So here, the e-bikes, the employees using them, they realize that they can't come to work biking, and they take care of their health and their environment. The last block we have created is the mobility card. So here the time to market is a bit too early, but the idea here is to create your mobility strategy and be able to be flexible for the new needs. So the mobility card, it will be in the near future an option you have to take in consideration and be ready to integrate in your mobility policy. Of course, the employees using mobility cards today have a very flexible mindset, and they're what we call also early adopters. So here we have created what we can tell a mobility integrator. And the idea here is that to build your mobility strategy so that it can be flexible, easy to use, and very accessible. Next slide, please. Once you have created your mobility strategy, the importance of monitoring is really vital. So to understand why it's so important to see the updates, the importance of updates. So here you have Tom. Tom, he's 40 years old. He has 3 kids. He lives in Paris in an apartment. He's head of marketing. He works in the suburban area, and he commutes 40 kilometers back and forth every day. In his personal life, he's driving to seaside each vacation. So today, Tom has a PHEV, a SUV PHEV. He has only a charger at the office. Before COVID, he was coming to work every day, and he had customer meeting every week. However, with COVID, he changed his habits. Now, he's working from home 3 times a week. He realized during COVID that he was losing so much time in the traffic jam that he preferred now to come to work by public transport. His clients' meetings are not anymore in person, so he's having them by Teams. And above all of this, he also wants, his mindset had changed, and he wants to be part and have a role in the transition to have a better world. So in his renewal, Tom will consider to choose another product. In this example, Tom is really thinking to use the switch product. He will be able to drive an electric vehicle every day. And once he wants to go to the seaside with his kids, he will use a SUV with surely a diesel powertrain. So here we can see that if you want to be really flexible and to understand your employees' need, you need to monitor your data. Next slide, please. So here we see that you're creating a data ecosystem. And by the example of Tom, we have identified there is a new source of data, which is your charging infrastructure. So you can start again the methodology by collecting the data, organizing your data, and analyzing the data to be sure you will always be offering the good offer to your employees. So here I will leave the floor to Frederic Wagner, our strategic partner, ChargePoint. He will talk to you about all the charging in the ecosystem and the holistic solution. So yeah, Frederic, merci.
Thank you, Virginie, and thank you again for all the attendees for being here today. As Virginie mentioned, I'd like to talk about what a data-driven and a data ecosystem in the world of charging means. So before I talk about products, services, etc., I'd like to take you on a journey of how your EV charging ecosystem will likely evolve over the coming years. And what you see here on the left is a typical customer development. So you're having your first employees that are now beginning to look at charging infrastructure. You're looking for public, home, and workplace solutions. You have pretty simple requirements as far as stations, maybe a couple AC charging stations for work and for home. Your group of drivers is homogeneous, so it's only company car drivers. You have a few fleet vehicles, no complexity regarding energy, so the overall system is quite easy. What a lot of customers here do is they go with a hardware-focused solution, so not networked, no software behind it. And that's where we think it's a big challenge, because if you look through into the future of what Virginie and the colleagues from ALD were talking about, it's about creating a holistic and aggregated charging ecosystem and mobility ecosystem. In this second stage, you see that maybe you're managing more workplaces, more homes, you have more charging infrastructure at your office locations, and you're managing different groups of drivers. So no longer only your company car employees, perhaps also visitors, managers, fleet drivers, and your fleet is expanding consistently. So you have PHEVs, BEVs consistently growing, and perhaps energy management becomes a topic at your locations. So you can see that this middle scenario where we'll all be within the next 5 years, things are getting a little bit more complex. And you can't solve this complexity with hardware alone. It's about software, and that's where the data comes in. If you look to the right side of the picture now, you're seeing what the future looks like. This is inevitably where many companies are going to be in the next 10 years. We've been around for 14 years, so we've seen this journey. The ecosystem on the right is held together by a strong software, a strong data-driven solution, bringing together all of your office locations, all of your public charging across Europe, across the globe, bringing your employees home charging solutions, and managing a diverse fleet of vehicles. So this is where we focus, and this is why we talk about a holistic, aggregated charging solution. If you could go to the next slide, I'd like to talk about how we create a platform to provide you the data that you need to make informed decisions about your fleet. Starting on the left, you see driver charging solutions. So this is what our partnership with ALD brings you. It provides your drivers a public charging solution that they can access over 200,000 charging stations across Europe. It gives you transaction management, so detailed insights, whether they're charging at home, at work, or on the road, and a home charging station, so you can reimburse those employees for their home usage. The other piece of the puzzle is obviously the infrastructure that Virginie was mentioning, the infrastructure at your office locations. So hardware, AC or DC charging, the software to manage that, to connect it to the cloud so you can configure pricing, access control for visitors, etc. And most importantly, the support for that. So 24/7 driver support is what we provide you. And this is one common platform. So you're not having data sources from public charging, from home charging, from workplace charging. It's one common solution. So you have complete transparency and control over what your drivers are doing. And this is what we believe makes you 100% EV ready. So on the next slide, I'd like to talk a little bit about the cycle. So we're here talking about data, and we understand that data is the new gold. So let's start at the bottom right and to understand how this flow of EV charging data realizes itself in the future, or this world that we're all going into of EV charging. So you, the company or the fleet manager, you provide your drivers a vehicle. But what changes is you no longer provide a fuel card or something else, you provide a charging solution with that. And that charging solution consists of access to public charging infrastructure. It consists of workplace charging infrastructure at your office locations, and it consists of a home charging solution that automatically reimburses those customers. So your driver uses their charging service that's packaged with their vehicle to access all of those locations. So 100% of the charging sessions that they do, you have transparency and you can see that usage. That charging data, as I mentioned, is aggregated in ChargePoint. So our cloud service, obviously completely GDPR compliant across the globe, and we provide you that transparency to manage your fleet. So you know which driver has charged at these locations, and you can ensure that they have the right charging solution for their respective profile. ALD combines this offer and gives you that aggregated solution that Virginie was describing. And the end result is 100% data transparency in this EV charging ecosystem. So I'll hand back over to Virginie, and I look forward to any questions later in the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederic, for this very clear presentation and all the data you can have from the charging infrastructure. So to conclude this webinar, as you heard a lot, data is the new gold. But here, it's very important to follow the different steps we have mentioned. First of all, you have to collect the data. Soon, we will be overwhelmed with data. We're in the movement of IoT, Internet of Things. So everything will bring you data, and you have to identify the collecting sources before organizing and analyzing this data. The importance of organizing and analyzing the data will help you to build your strategic foundation of your mobility strategy. And it will be the key of success of your mobility policy. The importance of monitoring your data is that it will help you to stay connected, updated, and informed about your employees, but also about the society and the evolution of the new society. You will be able to stay flexible and to adapt your mobility solution to all the evolution. And at the end, this will generate satisfaction. Satisfaction to your employees, but also to your stakeholders. So we just finish our presentation, and we would be very happy to answer all the questions you have about this very interesting topic.
Thank you very much. Thank you to our expert speakers. And as Virginie has pointed out, if you have questions, then please submit them via the chat. Of course, I prepared a few questions myself, but I already see that also in the chat that there are questions. I'm going to launch now the Q&A. A question that popped in from Ronald De Haan. He is mentioning, with the unwillingness of the OEMs to share vehicle data, how do I, as a fleet manager, gather vehicle data? A third-party device, a dongle, for example, is in fact also dependent on the OEMs to learn all the protocols and share the data. Can someone answer that question?
Sure, I'll take that, Stephen. It's a very valid point. It's a very good question. The manufacturers do seem reticent to share their data. I think, to be honest, maybe they don't fully understand what they've got and how it can be used. But that would be wrong of me to make that statement. I think with the third party device, you need to decide what data you want and how you want to use it. The information coming from a vehicle, whether it's an internal combustion engine or an electric vehicle that we're taking from an OBD port and from management information that's on the vehicle, is massive. There is hundreds and thousands of lines of what's there. So I think my question back, or what I would say is, understand what you want to get from the vehicle first. Understand what it is that's going to help you, whether it's transitioning your fleet to electric, whether it's looking at your e-mobility policy. Understand really what you want, because the amount of information that we can get from an OBD or from the third party device, if you like, wherever it's plugged in, is massive. And turning that into something usable is the first point. It's the first step. What are you going to use it for? And then tell us what you're going to use it for, what you would like it for, and I'm sure that we can supply it to you through a third party device. There is a lot of information in there.
Continuing on that, Matt, I can assume that there are also fleet managers that don't have an exact ID what they are going to do and what they can do and what kind of focus they should have in terms of the data that is interesting for them. In what way are you, ALD, but probably also ChargePoint, able to guide customers that are willing to go for fleet electrification, but don't know exactly what are the focus elements they need to concentrate on?
Well, I think in honesty, Stephen, this is more of a question for Virginie, because this is exactly what the consultancy team are doing. Is they are taking the data from telematics and the data from charging, and they are helping customers understand what it is. Virginie, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, of course. Yes, so it's here where consultancy have a very important role. And as I mentioned in the webinar, we will help our customer to find and to define with them the criteria I mentioned in the webinar. For example, we know that the charging infrastructure and the mileage are very important to help to define the strategy they want to planify. So yeah, I would say there is main points you have to main criteria you have to take in consideration. But after, we like to create tailor-made methodology and approach with our customer. So we will go and we will organize workshop to identify the criteria specific to their company and environment.
Another question to Virginie. In the slide where you were, giving a view about matching your data and defining your criteria, you mentioned elements like, indeed, mileage, business trips and holidays, charging infrastructure, the job position of the employee, and also the mindset. What do you mean by that? And in what way can fleet managers identify what the mindset is?
So it's a very good question, but it's the importance, for example, of having a survey to ask directly your employees, your employees, what are their needs, and you can have questions, quite open questions, like what is your dream mobility. People will be able to talk about what they want, what they are expecting in the future, but what they are expecting from you. So here you can more or less already define a bit the mindset. So that's one part. But also we see that COVID had changed everything. And we can see that people are taking more and more care about environment. That's a fact. And also about their health. They're realizing that their health can be connected to their mobility. So, for example, the e-bikes, and maybe they want to be cautious about the environment and use car sharing, and they were using cars. So you see here that you can define more or less the mindset of someone, and you will quickly understand that someone who has his car and he's passionate about his car and that he doesn't want to change for the moment. So those employees will be a bit more difficult to switch to a more innovative solution. But you have also the new generation, but also the people who like to be innovative and part of this transition.
Okay, a question for Frederic. Frederic, you were telling that ChargePoint is bringing a view about the complete charging infrastructure in the mobility mindset of the customer, and that you have a partnership there, for example, with ALD. I can imagine that your company, ChargePoint, is not as active in all European countries where perhaps fleet managers have activities. Probably like with every industry, when you have a strategic plan of expansion, there are some countries where your charging infrastructure network is already very mature, and in other countries, there can still be some development to do. What can you bring already to those customers that also have vehicles, fleets, activities in probably countries where ChargePoint is not yet so strong?
No, that's a great question, Stephen. So thank you for that. I think it's important to begin with saying that charging is a little bit more complex than just fueling, since you can charge at very different locations, so at home, at public, or at work. And at ChargePoint, I spoke about it, a holistic solution is important to us. You don't want to be able to provide your drivers just one piece of the puzzle, because that's not going to be sufficient to address their entire charging needs. So when we look at expanding in Europe, we make sure that we can provide that holistic solution in every market that we go into. So of course, one could just sell hardware in one market. That's not a problem, but that doesn't provide the holistic solution that we're looking for. So when we look at our European coverage right now, we are fully present with this holistic solution in 14 countries. So you could make a line from Portugal to Norway or to Finland, so to speak, and that's our coverage. And we partner with ALD in expanding in that roadmap across those countries. So our goal is to provide a holistic solution. And in the countries where we're present, we want to expand that partnership as well.
And does this then mean that the data coming from ProFleet, for example, is directly integrated, included in that holistic solution, or vice versa? How does that work? How does this combination work?
So the way we're looking at it, Stephen, is that the data from connected vehicles and the data from charging, the charging ecosystem, is vital to a customer, to a fleet, to understand what it's costing to run their fleet. We see some people moving into electrification where their main objective is around getting the vehicles. But if the infrastructure, if they don't create that ecosystem and infrastructure behind it, they can't see what it's really costing to run their vehicles. So the mileage from the connected vehicle and the actions of the driver and the way they perform, added to the charging infrastructure data, is absolutely critical in understanding your fleet, and also being able to take that data and share it with other drivers to understand, for example, where there are free public chargers in the system, where you can have a car park, and I experienced this personally recently, a car park in Eindhoven where there are 4 different charge points operating at 4 different prices and at 4 different speeds. So to take that ecosystem and understand how it all connects together, add it into the connected vehicle data, it's what we strive to do. It's what we encourage our customers to do, so that they can really see how their fleet is operating.
And is ProFleet already available in each and every country in Europe where also ALD is present?
ProFleet, we're rolling out the latest version of ProFleet over the coming period. It's not available in all countries yet, but it will be. So if anybody wants more details on where ProFleet is available, they can contact us. And it's a agnostic system, so it doesn't matter whose platform we take, whose information we're taking in there. It's an agnostic platform, so we can take anybody's data and put it in, aggregate it, and make it consistent, similar to what ChargePoint do.
A final topic that I would like to tackle with you is, of course, the current situation that we are living. Almost in every country, we see energy prices going through the roof. And in what way could this or accelerate or be an obstacle for companies, employees to say, well, it's now the right time to switch?
So my view on this, and we might all want to give a view on this because they might be slightly different, but my view on this would be energy is the key word here. It's not just electricity and gas that are increasing in price. Traditional fossil fuels are as well. And in some places they're accelerating even faster. So I think the gap in the cost between electricity and say diesel or petrol is still remaining pretty constant in some places. Certainly the UK, we're at prices near to 2008 now. for diesel. So there is more than just the fuel here. It's about what we're doing with our environment. We only have one world, and nobody said that being sustainable in the way we travel was going to not cost anything. So I think we have to put the cost element to one side and kind of look at what we're trying to achieve here with electrification, with e-mobility, with the way we move around. And maybe just accept that actually it might cost us a little bit more in the short term, but in the long term, it's the right thing to do. I don't know, guys, have you got a comment you want to make on that as well?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Yeah, it's very good point you have. From my side, from the consultancy part, I think it's important to talk about mobility in general. And so we want, when we're discussing with our customer, to integrate all types of mobility, because we don't know what will happen. We see the costs are increasing, but we have to be flexible and adaptable to all the needs which are raising. We know that there is a lot of different types of mobility will arrive, and we don't know yet. So I think that the answer here is to build a methodology which helps you to adapt to the market. COVID situation, no one had imagined that it could happen. So here we have to be aware, anticipate, and try to be a good advisor for our customers so that we can create a mobility strategy and a very flexible mobility strategy.
Okay, that's clear. Frederic, perhaps?
Yeah, I'd have one comment there. Obviously, I'm a little more intrinsically motivated that EVs are the future, and I'd like to bring that future forwards as quickly as possible. But to answer your question, Stephen, I think EVs were never happening only because electricity was cheap or expensive, etc. EVs provide a completely different user experience. So electricity is pervasive; it's all around us. So that allows you to get fuel all around you at work, while you're shopping, at home. So I think when fleet managers look at this, perhaps they should also consider the new type of fueling experience, the convenience that an EV can bring, and not only the cost of the kilowatt hour.
Okay. A final question for the people of ALD, because Virginie has elaborated around it's really important that we are looking at mobility and that we try to define and set up the right mobility plan and strategy for our customers. And is it also the goal that the technology of ProFleet will be expanded to other mobility modes, as you have bikes, you have e-bikes, etc.? So not only the vehicle, but that you also have, let's say, direct data coming from other mobility modes than the vehicle?
Well, as I said in my presentation, we need to be able to accept new forms of data for new technologies. So if there is a feed there that we can use, and there is a need from our customers, I see no reason why we wouldn't be able to do this. I'm not going to say it's there right now. Mm-hmm. But we have to be able to cope with different types of mobility data, and bring them to our customer as they need them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. We are going to close the webinar here. I would like to thank Virginie, Matt, and Frederic for their expertise, and also ALD, of course, for supporting the Fleet Week. We continue the Fleet Week. This afternoon, we will have a video podcast with BMW Group, and you see on the slide also the upcoming sessions tomorrow and after tomorrow. So please stay with us also for the rest of the week of this Fleet Week on Connected and Electric. And once again, I would like to thank everyone for their expertise and also the audience for watching this episode of the Fleet Week. Thank you very much, and see you later today and tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you.